Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the LIC podcast, where we talk about weird stuff we found to watch. Today, our centerpiece for that conversation is Lamb, which is an A24 film that came out relatively recently. I don't want to give any opinions at this point. I want to hear the conversation. So with us today, we have Matt Metro.
Hello.
And Jose.
Hi.
So just to kind of kick us off at first, I like to go into this conversation with this particular movie and just dive right into first impressions that I think we can cover because, wow.
Yeah, we don't have to start at the ending.
Let's not.
First impressions,
Of what part? Chapter 1, Chapter 2, or Chapter 3?
right, they're pretty distinct.
Yeah. I guess the beginning of the movie was more slow than I could have possibly imagined.
Isn't it just fucking terrible? It's a slog.
Like, man, the first time viewing, I feel gets most certainly a lot of pass because you just don't know where it's going, right? And just from the slow boiling aspect in the first viewing, has its merits as a result of that. The heel turns and the left, and the switch ups that they do most certainly play really well to the amount of time that it took for you to get to them, so that's kind of okay. I can most certainly see how that would suffer horrendously on a second viewing, especially. But that's just me. I mean,
It did allow me a little more time to, I don't know, I guess like piece together or look more in detail at those like beginning things that the movie's trying to tell you, like, oh, this couple probably previously lost a child and maybe that's why they're so distant. And it does take too long to play it out, but they do spend a lot of time showing and not telling,
for sure.
It's strange because it is undoubtedly slow, and maybe you guys disagree, but from my perspective, it's not boring. It's just slow.
Oh, I know a lot more about sheep husbandry and than I did prior to the beginning of this movie, so it certainly wasn't a lot, waste of time.
As long as you learn something.
Yeah, exactly. I saw the proper maneuverability in order to be able to pull, the little kid out of a mother lamb.
A lot less finesse than I thought that there would be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's just let nature do its thing, and then where there's bumps, just kind of pull a little
help
bit.
it along.
Yeah. So for the viewers, if you have a sheep that's gonna give birth, just yank it out of there for them.
Yeah, exactly. They don't care.
I do wonder, like, those actors probably had to take some like animal husbandry lessons and like, here's how you grab the head, because those were like real sheep, right?
Yeah, I would imagine so.
I mean, it didn't look like there's a lot to learn. After seeing it once, I wouldn't be pleased to do it, but I'm sure I could do an okay job.
Yeah, I would imagine there's probably a situation where they could go to like a sheep farm that actually is a legitimate sheep farm in season,
Mm-hmm.
and just be like, hey, can we set it up and have our people kind of do the thing?
Mm.
Yeah,
I wonder, like, if there's not people around, do the babies just end up like dangling out of there for a while?
I was wondering about that. Like,
go ahead.
it seems so assisted in this movie, and it's like, why? What does happen if they're not there?
Mm.
Do they need to do that?
I would imagine that if I'm gonna connect it to what I know about how wildebeests are born, that like they, like if the person wasn't there, like the baby would have to wake up and like start kicking like toward like the
Jesus.
exit,
Oh,
know.
really?
Because like when a wildebeest is born, like the wildebeest is born already knowing how to run, essentially. Like it runs out of its mother, essentially, because
What?
they only have a couple minutes before they have to continue onward,
To keep moving.
yeah,
right?
to keep moving, exactly. So the baby is born already knowing how to run. So I would imagine, right, that perhaps thousands of years before our domestication probably made it so like maybe they just don't do that anymore. Like these domestic type of sheep. But I would imagine that like the way that we see it in the movie, like the baby wakes, like is born asleep essentially, you know, like, and then like once they're on the ground, plop, then they're like, you know, and that's when the mother starts like licking them and stuff like that. I would imagine that in a more wild scenario, the baby would wake up inside of the womb and begin trotting toward the exit on its own in that way, probably hurting the mother a lot more, but the job could still get done in that way. And the mother would already automatically know, okay, the moment that's out, turn around, start licking, you know, because the mother didn't care until she heard the bleeding. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like, oh, it's out. Okay. But is it alive? Like,
yeah. So
know.
Maybe it's a measure to protect the mother sheep so you don't lose your livestock.
it's possible. Yeah.
Sure.
Also, I mean, I would imagine that as people who have this as a living, right? I would imagine they probably sell these sheep to market, you know, either eventually for meat, mostly keep them for the wool to be able to process that. Like, you want to be able to have these sheep have multiple kids. So you want to be able to keep their womb and everything as pristine and intact as possible, because it's got to happen next year. And if these kids are kicking every single year, you know what I mean? Like, you're talking about a whole 3 years worth of lack of use that you can take out of the sheep, which you could potentially totally get, you know?
Yeah.
Which, if
Strong
we're talking
breeding.
dollars and cents or whatever the fuck Icelandic people use for money.
Whatever goofy money they have over there.
Yeah. That would be my take on that. That's, you know.
Why do you know so much about
Yeah, I'm
wildebeest?
fascinated that
Just Animal Planet. I mean, like,
for
just
sure.
watching Animal Planet and just watching, like, just documentaries and stuff about that, you know, like, just I've always found it very interesting that, the genetic warfare of that the prey animals also implement, you know what I mean? Like, oh, like we're gonna get eaten at any time. We have to be born running, you know, like we cannot play, you know. Like, I find, even from a little kid, I always thought that was so interesting, because there's lions and cheetahs and everything, like, literally all over the place. Hippopotamus will sometimes just eat a wildebeest for no reason, you know what I mean? Like,
just for fun.
just for fun. Yeah, like, they'll literally just come out of the river and clomp down on them, you know what I mean? If they're all drinking by the same river, you know what I mean? Like, what's one?
Yeah, it is something interesting that I was thinking about when we were watching this too. Just watching all the sheep is they're definitely prey animals. They're startled so frequently, like, by everything. And you see that a lot in here.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching for how much of it really related over to Ada.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty hilarious how the amount of anthropomorphization you can do to a sheep in this movie, in terms of, like, what you think they're thinking and, like, what their paws actually mean and stuff like that. Especially after they took the baby from that mother one, and she, like, kept being like, "Hey, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, where's my baby?"
Standing
bitch?
outside the window, like,
Yeah.
hey.
Mhm.
So this is actually a weird thing that does happen, though. Like, if you I remember growing up hearing this because I grew up in the middle of nowhere. If you take a calf from a cow to sell it or whatever, newborn, they cry all night.
Right.
And they'll break out and leave looking for the calf,
Right.
which is super sad. So sorry, everybody that had to listen to that.
We have a commenter here. Jared is saying that it's possible that sheep have been selectively bred for so long that they can't properly function in the wild.
Absolutely
And I think that could
possible.
be. That could definitely.
Oh yeah,
be the case.
that's what I was saying in terms of, like, these domestic sheep need the help, but
Right.
in the long past, and, you know, their ancestor probably had it where they, like, probably kick out of the womb, because they need to already be coming out. I mean, because the baby was already knew how to walk. You know what I mean? Like, even the one that did get assisted help, like, the moment that it woke up and it got a bit of the grime taken off of it, it had already managed to walk. I would imagine that in days past, when the sheep weren't as well nutritioned, you know, like, I would imagine that there wasn't as much viscosity, like, to, like, them coming out, because there just wasn't as much nutrient to, like, keep the baby, like, you know, clean and lean in that way. So it's just, you know,
Well, they had stronger
also, they probably
uteruses.
came out smaller, so maybe you'd have 3-4 kids at the same time. You know, one dies. You know what I mean? 2 die. Whatever. You still have 2 that are off and going right
Mhm.
away. You know.
I mean, what Jared said is super, super valid too, though, in the sense that, like, I mean, even people, because our births have been assisted for as long as they have, there's tons of people who can't have natural births and they have to have C-sections.
I've
And that's
heard that-
becoming more and more common.
Yeah,
that
yeah, I've
will
heard
be
that.
the only
Mhm.
common
Yeah.
way to be able to do so if we continuously make these babies too nutritious. And this
Don't
is when
say
the real
nutritious.
platform begins. you see.
It sounds like you're going to eat them when you say nutritious.
well, they're too well fed. There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
We're making too plump of babies.
These 14 pounders have got
Yeah,
to go.
exactly.
Yeah, nutritious babies.
So,
Well, that
yeah.
was a long tangent on the first impressions. I don't at this point know what your actual first impression of the movie was.
So,
other than
okay,
slow.
you had it kind of broken down by
Slow
chapter
but
a
interesting.
little.
I mean, like I was saying, I thought it was very slow. It
Mm.
was but to the benefit of the movie, I did not know where it was going, so I was paying attention to the whole thing because I didn't want to be out on what it actually is, the hook aspect of the movie. So I was trying to watch for everything,
Mhm.
right? Which
yeah,
you know,
it's the
good.
quiet.
Which is a good, which I mean, in retrospect, is a good, modality in terms of making the movie. All I'm saying is in terms of potential second viewings, you know what I mean, multiple viewings,
Mhm.
I can see that being an aspect that can suffer from that because I'm no longer anticipating anything. Now I'm like, okay, yes, you're sheep herders, yes, okay. When's the creepy baby coming? Yeah.
Yep, creepy baby.
This
okay.
being my second viewing, it was heavily assisted by anticipation of your reaction.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, big
So
time.
always have somebody who you can vicariously feel like the tension palpitating through
Mm.
in order to watch this movie if you're gonna watch it multiple
Oh.
times.
The value of the movie is like viral because when one person watches it, they're like, I want somebody else to see this
Mhm.
because I had to watch it.
Well, you know, that's an important distinction to make nowadays, especially with the kind of movies that are out nowadays, is like a movie that stands on its own 100%. Like I can pop this on my lonesome and watch this movie and I will have a great fucking time.
Mm.
Or a movie such as what you just mentioned right now and monikered a viral movie in that like the fun will come from the fact that I am going to infect somebody else with this movie and look at their face as I like make them watch this lamb baby, you know. what I mean?
This was why I picked Tusk all those months ago. I was
Okay,
like,
yeah, cool.
yeah.
Hmm. I would say that one probably holds a little. That one actually holds better on its own. I would say even
Yeah.
better than this one.
It gets funny as you watch it
Yeah,
over.
yeah.
It
Tusk does, yeah, for sure.
evolves
Mhm.
from like something that's horrific and uncomfortable into a comedic enjoyment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. It's got more than one leg to stand on, and in this one, it's like the horror aspect is strong. It's a big, strong, beefy leg, but at the same time, once you kick that leg off of it, it really is just kind of like sitting there like, and it's still gross, you know what I mean, at certain point it's still creepy if you don't like if you find the juxtaposition of a human body and, you know, an animal,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and a domestic animal mixed together like that to be creepy, then yeah, it will probably always be creepy when you look at it. But
The second watch has a little bit of its own merit too because they are so slow to show you what's actually going on that like I didn't notice that on my first watch. I came in very blind and so like when I saw that Ada was what she was, I was like, how did I not notice this the whole time?
Mhm.
Like, how did I not pick up the hints on the way here? So watching it the second time, I'm watching for those things that I missed that I wasn't looking for the first watch.
Mm.
and when on earth, I'm sorry, no, I don't want to jump too far ahead in the movie. All right, so where are we now in terms of structure?
Well,
I
we
really
can.
think we should save the ending and just
Yeah,
unpackage that
yeah.
together.
Well, I want to ask, but so as we're okay in the beginning here, still, what were you? Because this movie like really affected me emotionally
Okay.
in a lot of ways. So I'm curious, like, what were you feeling throughout the first chapter? How
Well,
were you?
feeling? Okay.
Yeah.
Curiosity for the most part in relation to what the point was.
Mm-hmm.
That was really the driving aspect of it. There wasn't a lot of I didn't get any genuine opportunity to come to appreciate the characters because they didn't characterize themselves all that much. Like they were literally just slabs of a backstory, like there were slabs with backstories written on their back, written dead kid, you know. And from there, that phrase carries quite a gravity, you know what I mean, between us, right? So it's like if I know you have a dead kid, there's, I know quite a lot already, you know.
One moment
Yeah.
to appreciate, though. I love when movies don't do the ham-fisted thing where they do a backstory scene where someone just happens to in detailed mention everything that happened to them. That seems very forced to me, and I
Indeed.
like that they don't do that.
But there, I feel, is a big enough field in between the gluttony of too much tell and the anemic aspect that this movie was kind of going toward.
Anemic is a really good
You
word
know,
for
Yeah.
it.
Because it isn't as though there was nothing there, and again, like you can really intuit, which maybe is exactly what they were kind of going for. But intuition doesn't help me actually come to be attached to the character, and if eventually you're going to put your characters in peril later on, I feel that if what you're seeking for me is to be brought down by it, they need to be more than just vehicles for your parable, which in this movie they kind of just are, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not it almost feels like they're not really people, you know what I mean? Like they really are just pieces of a story that's going to that's trying to tell me a moral.
Well, there's so little dialogue in this movie, and I believe that they did that intentionally, and it's interesting. You don't see many movies that are this quiet.
Yeah.
And
maybe
But
it's
that's
our,
part of it, I think.
our bastardized Western affectations that make it so we need to have, people having either enough dialogue to be able to, for me to be like, yeah, that's a person, you know what I mean? Or have them either be funny or have them, like in Fargo, you know what I mean? Like have the foil of have an individual who is highly quiet and silent, but with the contrasting of the fact that not everybody's like that, like there are people who want to talk, who have, who even if they have too much to say, they,
I think you hit the nail on the head there, because they gave us a little bit of time to feel out the characters when they watch the game and they get drunk together and they party a little bit, but I could not describe these characters with any character traits.
no.
I got nothing.
Well, like Jose said, dead kid tells you quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
They're probably not happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, but I can't be like, oh, this one has exactly what Jose said. Oh, this one is funny, or they're all just the same and quiet, excepting that, the brother Peter has a couple of shitty characteristics about him.
Shitty. When he's a musician, he wears a nice coat.
Those aren't character traits. That's an occupation and a thing on his body.
That he had to choose.
Yeah,
right?
okay, he's a slime ball, that's for sure. I mean, there's no arguing that. But.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just, for me, it's primarily based on, because, I mean, obviously there's some history between the characters, but it's when she's telling him no, and he's like, does Ada know you killed her mother? Did you just blackmail somebody into touching you?
Oh, 100%, yeah. And it seems to be 100% alcohol induced. And he knows that himself. He's I am a mean drunk. I shouldn't drink, but I'll have a sip.
Mean is a nice
Yeah, I'll
word
take
for
a
that
sip.
type of behavior.
Well, for sure. Vindictive drunk, perhaps, is probably the more apt way to say it. Yeah, but I mean, he's the only one that gets a deeper characterization in that way,
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the only character I could begin to describe.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that they even show his music video, I can piece together a life from just those instances like that, But
Yeah,
this
and
guy
him
was
mocking
hopeful.
it.
This guy, I can even understand how Maria actually potentially might have had the hots for him first.
Right.
It could have been a situation where she's this dude's hand me down to his little brother in that way. You know what I mean?
So
What?
I think it is possible that it was a grief-induced affair.
Well, that could be. like their kid died, and then she went and banged his brother.
Well, because the marriage between the two of them is really portrayed as super cold and
Yeah.
super quiet.
Yeah.
And like it's really, really common when a couple loses a child that divorce follows that, because there's so much grief and blaming and distance that's driven between them.
Mhm.
And just, I don't know.
Too many dark what ifs all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. And just like the situation and how the reactions are and how she's kind of inclined to act like it never happened. That's what it makes me feel like, at least, that maybe it was a place where she sought comfort in.
I
a
can
really
see
quiet
that,
grief.
especially considering the fact that at the beginning of the movie, we're already in the post-eclipse aspect of the child dying, right? Like they're already supposed to be like kind of in what their life will be like from now on,
Right.
I mean, like, sure, maybe things can thaw out a little bit more, but we're pretty much catching them at how they'll grow old at that
Mhm.
point.
Right.
Well, and the dynamic, right, is she responds to what we're assuming happened in like a really cold way. Like it gives me the impression that to her it might not have really meant anything except that it was a comfort,
Yeah.
where he seems attached to it, where like if he would have participated in that during her grief, it would have been because he wanted to. He's not led by an outside, impact.
Who, Peter?
Yeah.
But you're talking about his niece having been, dying. It's like I would imagine that like
Oh, that's true.
there would still be at least a matter of
That's
being
fair.
like we can't actually like get together in that way. You know what I mean? It's like I can provide comfort for you, and I can understand that my little brother is distant right now. You know what I mean? Like give him some time. Like sure, like we'll do whatever. You know what I mean? Especially if he's such a drifter kind of guy. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like that he's he's not only is he a slime ball that is willing to take advantage of the possibility to have sex with a woman in that way, but also because nobody is the villain in their own story, right? In his mind, he's like, I'm trying to, Maria needs a little bit of comfort, I'll do that for her, you know what I mean? But always under the condition that she stays with Ingvar, you know what I mean? Like that's like you guys together, you know what I mean? Like because even when Peter got there, it wasn't as an imposition of being like, I'm here for Maria, you know what I mean? It's like he was just, like the snake he is, trying to just find a moment to just be able to be like, any ember left here,
Yeah. Husband's asleep.
Yeah,
Like-
exactly. It wasn't a situation where it's like, yeah, like I'm here to take my woman, or like I'm here to like, stake my claim to her affections, you know what I mean? It's like
Him being there looked circumstantial to me. It looked like he got booted out of some other people's lives and he
Yeah.
ended up there.
yeah, it's like we'll give you a ride. Where do you live?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they even pulled him out of the trunk or something. Like,
Yeah, they like dumped him
yeah.
out there.
You get the fuck out of here, buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, remember what they said? He's like, yeah, some people don't understand him, and people owe him money,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
probably the other way around,
Right,
you know?
exactly. Yeah. It was almost sarcastic the way she said it.
Yeah.
Or it was sarcastic for sure.
Yeah, so I can see that. But again, I mean, if anything, Peter just showcases the lack of extra characterization for Ingvar and Maria, because it's like, what do I know about Ingvar? You know what I mean? Like, what do I know about his past in relation to his passions, his like what keeps him driven aside from being a sheep farmer, you know what I mean? Especially considering the fact that at first, when she was so taken in, because Maria was the one that swooped the baby up right away and she started walking away, right? He was like acquiescent to it, it looked like initially.
Yeah.
And
at the
then he
beginning.
went off, and then we have that little scene where he goes off to the, on the tractor, and he breaks down crying, kind of just doing the ultimate acquiescence of being like, we're just going to run with this, you
Yep.
know,
Yep.
kind of situation.
I think you're right. Yeah.
I do think, I mean, maybe it was a little like poured on a little thick, but I do think it was probably intentionally like symbolism of just that, like, they're empty with grief.
And check out what is one of the only two things written in my whiteboard. It just says symbolism, maybe.
Question mark? It does. I've seen it with my own eyes. Yeah, and I agree with you though. It does create kind of a counter effect where I don't feel sad when stuff happens to these characters. I did feel sad the first time that real emotion was expressed. I don't know, like seeing Maria cry at the end. That gave me like a little tinge of like, I don't know, because I imagine it must be horrible to find your husband dying, or dead.
Especially because, I mean, if the movie's supposed to give me some sort of like moral or parallel that like, you know, one bad deed begets another kind of situation, in the sense that like she killed the mother, so the dad of, you know, the dad of Ada killed, you know, the other dad kind of situation.
Right.
That doesn't really work because she doesn't even know who killed Ingvar. Like she's just there with a gun, you know what I mean, with a rifle in the middle of nowhere, you know, and
I don't think I don't think that there's a moral here, or I don't think that they're trying to symbolize a moral. And correct, you give me your thoughts, but it feels like I don't know. It feels more like Fargo in the sense that like not just like one bad deed begets another, but just bad and sad all the way down. Like there's no winners in this equation. The whole story is just everybody is sad at the end.
I would see. Oh, go ahead, Hannah, please.
No, sorry. I really, I want to pump the brakes on the ending, and I feel like this conversation is definitely going to lead into the ending.
I'm just treading ground around what happened in the end. We haven't even done the reveal of what actually killed Ingvar. I mean, he dies at the end. I mean, let's not.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler.
I mean, what else is there left to talk about? We already talked about the fact that they were hanging out together. She spurned his advances. You know, Peter's piece of shitness. You know what I mean?
Peter almost kills Ada.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
something we should talk about. But just to appreciate what Jose said really, really quick is, it's a really good point. Because of the slowness of this movie, I do feel like I could tell someone about this movie in 1.5
I've done it with my coworker the following day from watching this movie. That Monday, I was like, I have to tell you the plot of this movie. It's only going to take a minute. But it's fucking weird. I have to tell somebody.
Yeah. I mean, and this is, again, the kind of weird, like, the weird thing that happens when you only characterize one character, right? Like, I can only focus on one. And, like, the only one I can focus is the fish out of water in this situation, which is Peter. Right. And like the fact that Peter doesn't like shuffle back when he fucking sees Ada for the first time makes me think that there are strange things happening in Iceland. You know, that that a man will not fucking shuffle back when he sees some sort of human lamb chimera situation happen. You know.
Yeah, he went on to eat, which is surprising that you could even focus on putting something in your face first.
Seriously, especially because it isn't like a Minotaur-esque kind of situation where like the head's, the animal and then the rest is human. It's like a 27% is animal. And it's a very odd number. Like, that's why I'm doing 27% is the animal and the other section is the human. So it's like,
this is like one of my favorite moments in this movie is when they're having breakfast, because like there's a subtlety there, because he's like, are you expecting company? Because he sees extra plate. And he hears them call Ada, which I didn't catch the first time I watched this because I didn't know their late child's name yet.
Oh, right. Yeah. And so that must have been especially
he
weird.
Looked confused. Yeah. And then when she comes in there, I mean, I would expect like, I don't know, maybe it's a culture thing, but I would be like, the fuck is that?
Or just,
I'd be so freaked out.
But just the staring and then the indignant staring at his brother, I think is hysterical.
Yeah. See, that leans into a good like black comedy kind of situation. You know what I mean?
It does.
Like, if there would have been a couple more scenes about that, maybe the movie could have had some buoyancy in that direction too. But as it stands, to contrast your Fargo parallel,
Mhm.
I would say that it's the fact that there's no consistency to that thread of like nothing's being learned, everyone's a piece of shit. Like
Well,
that Fargo holds throughout the entire movie, aside from the main protagonist, you know what I mean? She's just essentially the one who has to absorb all of the nihilism that is like happening around her.
Well,
know?
there's that like whole message, but there's also this like okay, so through the lens of like Ada is the main character of this movie, in the same way that like the sort of innocent bystanders were the main characters of Fargo. Not the main characters, but like the driving force.
Again,
like,
see, I don't know. It's tough to say because it's like at that point, it's like all I can think of is that that dude's son that got left behind with no mom and dad at the end. It's like the main character of the story.
Right.
Like he's the one I can feel the most bad for.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Well, and that's what makes me think that like I don't know, like you're saying, all these characters are all sort of vapid, and except for Peter, like there's not much meat on the bones there.
Let me stop right there because the people themselves don't feel vapid. They don't feel as though they're like there's nothing behind them. It's just that the movie doesn't do anything to characterize them any further than what we see for their occupation and whatever. I can believe that they have more things going on. You know what I mean? I can believe that Ingvar can have like another passion, another hobby, so can Maria and stuff like that. But the movie doesn't give me anything about that. The only people who get characterization are Peter. You know what I mean? Like they go to the barn, what do they find in there? They find his drum set that then he uses in order to be able to showcase his past in that way. You know? So it's like whose movie is this? You know?
Yeah, okay, so go ahead.
I was just going to say this is in a different movie done a different way. It would feel lazy to me. And I'm not sure why, but in this movie it doesn't feel lazy of the movie makers.
To do what exactly? Or not do what?
To not give that extra depth to
their main characters?
Yeah, their main characters. It doesn't it feels like an intentional decision.
Okay. I mean, and I can accept the fact that it's an intentional decision, and I can also accept the fact that a lesser director, you know, / creative team might ham it up, but I think we can all agree that there is a threshold of brilliance between those two aspects wherein a genuinely great movie shines, where it's like, you don't have to give me the entire backstory of this individual, but, you know, piecemeal me a person, you know, that I can latch onto and be like, okay, yes, this is a human, and like this is another empathy node that I can actually like connect to, and what's happening to them is quasi happening to me. How would I feel as I'm, you know, as I'm in their shoes? I just can't do that with these two particular characters, but I can do that with Peter. Even as much of a slimeball as he is, I can understand how he feels as he's getting on that bus. I can understand how he feels as he's spurned inside of that closet. You know what I mean? Like they gave enough characterization for him to be able, you know what I mean, for me to be able to latch in that way. Even with his 180ing of Ada, you know what I mean? Like he was with the full intention of taking her out back and doing his brother and, you know, sister-in-law a favor, quote unquote, by essentially removing, you know what I mean, them, like removing this like weird connection that they were trying to make, you know, with this, again, quote unquote animal that he saw. But he had a full 180 of thought and conception and affection to this, you know, to this creature, and grew as a person essentially in that way, because he came in super cold, super skeptical, and left humbled and a bit warmer at the end.
I agree with you. I mean, even though a lot that they showed us about him was not so flattering, he's my favorite human character of the three in this movie. But I do also think...
3.
Okay. At 3.5. 3.75.
Oh, holy shit. Are you 3/5ing Ada right now?
I do have a point. No, but it's like, what I will give back from that perspective is it's the same. The couple feels the same. Like there's a very consistent vibe across them. And I don't know, in some ways that blank space gave me this little bit of a gap where it allowed me to wonder about them. You know, I didn't just take everything they gave me at face value. I was like, oh, what happened in their life? I wonder what they were like before this happened, you know? And
I agree, but the thing is that in order for me to be able to play that game, that I wonder what their life was like before game, I need certain tools and clues, you know, that the movie masterfully provides for Peter. You know what I mean? Like, we get two things from him. We get the fact that he's really, really good at drumming. We get, you know, and we get his music video, you know. Just from those two things, I can extrapolate to a whole early teens, you know, whole 20s, late 30s, you know what I mean? And then looking at his face right now and seeing the fact that things didn't work out, you know what I mean? That, you know, overall, this is where he's at, even with all of these innate talents and passions that he had and like drives that he had when he was younger, you know, like there's a lot there's a lot there in just those two things that I can use to infer.
Yeah. Also, this is my assumption.
All I know of Ingvar is that he's a farmer. Has he always been a farmer? Because that's totally fine too. Because, you know, because it could be, because like what you mentioned in the beginning, it's like this is somebody's family farm, it looks like, right? And it probably is like Peter and Ingvar's family's family farm, because he seems to be just so chill and cool with just being like, well, I'm appearing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I think I'm wondering about the more I think what's it called? Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Mm-hmm.
That story keeps coming to me.
Okay.
Thinking about this, does that you guys feel that at all? Like throughout the course of the movie, like it's like because the main characters are kind of bland and even, and then we get one sort of more fleshed out one. Like, I don't know. I just
yeah, the tertiary character is the one that's, you know, filled in essentially.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. Do you get that vibe of like?
Okay, you know what? To play now, I'm rounding around. I've drank enough to round around to become my own devil's advocate. You know, so I wonder if I wonder now, right?
Finally,
if the fact that we don't get those kind of humanistic characterizations for the two characters really does showcase the bottomless abyss that is the grief of having lost their child. You know, to the degree that it cratered them so much that it ate whatever passion, hobby / you know, dream that they might have potentially had before. And we are catching them in a position where perhaps the eclipse is beginning to wane in that way. They're beginning to, you know, find normality in some fashion, but there's not enough light there for them to be able to be like, all right, this is what I like. This is what I do. This is, you know what I mean? Like,
it's the first, like, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it seemed like they had to get drunk to be normal, you know, because it was the first time there was any like real laughter or anything like that. But I mean, now Jose and I, not that you and I have swapped sides, but just because I like to challenge all the positions. I will say too, assuming that this is a family farm, because I think they gave us some hints there. And also that these people lived here and this couple, I potentially started to raise a child here. There's no hints in the house. Like, it's their house and it's their farm and their shed.
No hints? What do you mean?
Of like who they are. There's...
Of their past and their history, you mean? Like,
yeah, or what they enjoy doing. There's no hobby items anywhere that I saw. Yeah, but like even like I don't know, they didn't give us anything there. There is a TV in there. They watched one movie or something like that, and it was just like a deadpan stare at the TV. I don't know. It's just, it's a little bit weird that like I get the characters being empty 100%. it's weird that like when the brother comes in and they start, you know, reliving stuff and reminiscing and we get into the brother's history, but it's never like returned. It's never like, oh, and you were off doing this thing. You know, there's none of that.
Yep, I agree. I mean, I'm just relative to the environment that they chose to place the movie in, right? There will always be certain like I guess truthisms to it, right? If you live in a rural area like they do, you're not going to have the kind of like hustle and bustle of like a communal aspect, right? That can make it so you can separate from from like your spouse for a little while and be like, hey, listen, we're having a bit of a hard time. I'm gonna go hang out with my friends for a little bit, decompress in that way. You know, when I come back, I'll miss you that much more because, you know, we'll actually have spent time away from each other. Like in the place that they're at, like all they have is each other. But unfortunately, because it happened to both of them, like that isn't enough. Like there needs, like the moment that there was even a shitty buffer, like his brother there, it allowed them to be able to begin making those, you know, to essentially like break apart from each other, you know what I mean? And personalize themselves again into their own people, you know?
That's actually a really good point because they live out in the middle of nowhere. And we assume that that's where all of their troubles happened. They live on the land that their daughter is buried on. And
wait a minute. To counter your point about there not being any familial aspects, there's multiple crosses on the hill that Ada is buried on.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that at that point that is family land because of the fact that they are doing it in that way.
Yeah, and you assume their parents are dead too if they're living on the family farm. And there's more, so it is kind of like this weird cyclical grief snow globe that they live in.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no outside stimuli to mix it up or change things.
Or just make you be, you know, there needs to be something in relation. There's a lot to be said about just like a us against the world kind of feeling. You know what I mean? Like, because otherwise it's you against me all of the time. If this is our space and we're the only two, you know, creatures, you know, the master slave morality will come into play and one of us is going to have to, you know, either submit to the other or we'll both be fucking quiet the whole time because we're both equal, but we don't have anything to say to each other at the moment, you know? And, you know, and that's essentially the beauty of community, right? Is the fact that there are other shitheads out there that are strangers that you don't know, that you can note, you know, and then, compare to the people in your life and be like, oh, thank fucking goodness, you know, they're not, I don't have to deal with them. Like, thank goodness for the people in my life. Think, you know, like all of the little peccadillos and issues that like the people in your life have, you know, become that much smaller when you have to compare them to strangers. And when you don't have strangers to do that to, you know, every issue gets magnified, you know, in that way. And if you're not an assertive person like these two obviously aren't, you know, everything just gets bottled up. And bottled up and bottled up, you know.
Because they don't talk ever. And when you really think about it in terms of their environment, what are they going to talk about? They don't have any stimuli. They're not even pressed to talk about their days because their days are the same.
Yep.
They do the same stuff every day and they do the same stuff as each other.
And I would imagine that, you know, picking at the choices, the directorial choices in the movie, right? We can even extend their impersonalization to how the fact that they don't even give their dog a name. You know, like their dog's name is just Dog. Like,
and it's probably the best character in the movie.
Yeah,
though.
Exactly. And it's like, so it's like, if you don't even anthropomorphize your dog, you know, in that way, but you're willing to anthropomorphize this lamb creature, right? I guess it just showcases the fact that they're just so overflowing with like the need to like anthropomorphize and magnify to something else that like this creature will do essentially.
Yeah, because we see, I mean, the cat, right? We see the cat enough times in this movie that we joked about the cat while we were watching this movie. Did we ever see anybody pet the cat?
No.
He just lives there.
Yeah.
And the dog sleeps like in a like porch type or barn area.
Yeah, they
There's
close
like a blanket
the door.
on the
Yeah,
floor.
they close the door to like the human commons area to the dog. You
Yep.
know, so it's like, again, it's like maybe that's a cultural thing. You know, like I don't want to read too much don't want to read too much into their setup in that way. But at the same time, in relation to like their interpersonality with each other and their animals, it's like,
Yeah.
everybody's so cold.
So I cannot speak to obviously the country that they live in, but I can speak to farms a little bit where animals are very much not on all farms. I'm not, just stereotyping or anything, but I've seen it as a commonality where animals are treated more like tools,
For sure.
like Cat lives in the house because Cat hunts mice. He does a job in the house.
Right.
The dog does a job outside. He herds the sheep. And it's more of like that. Because even just with petting the dog, we saw the brother pet the dog.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever saw the owners of the dog pet the dog.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just an expectation that it will do what it's supposed to do because it's a dog, and that's
He
what
works here.
Yeah, that's what it's meant to do.
Yeah, and I have noticed a little bit just on a couple of like farms and situations like that I've interacted with and been in. It's like, we got a cat because there was mice in our house. We got a dog because we have sheep. And they deal with so many animals and so much like death of animals, like having chickens, eaten by foxes or coyotes and, stuff like that animals become a little bit more dissonant than people who don't really interact with them unless they're pets.
For sure. I can totally understand the need to be able to create that barrier of depersonalization, you know what I mean, in relation to the animal, especially if you're working in an environment where the fatality of the animal is very, very high. That doesn't happen to dogs that often. You know what I mean? Like, you usually have a dog for at least 5-6 years, even if it eventually does come to pass that an ill occurs to the dog, like, and dogs are just so pro-human affectionate that it's just like, I can understand with a cat, you know what I mean? Like, yes, we got a cat because it's a mouser, you know what I mean? It kills mice all over. But the cat isn't ever going to come over and be like, haha, like, we got it, we did it, you know what I mean? Like,
praise me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we saw that with this dog, right? Because, like, man, herding dogs are really good dogs. They're so attentive to their owners. And we saw that with this
and
dog
to their
in the
environment. They're looking at every single one of those sheep being like, try something.
Yeah, he's doing his job through this whole movie, but he goes everywhere with Igvar. Thank you. He'll watch the sheep. He's doing his job, but when Ingvar leaves, he's by his side and he comes up and he's looking up at him and they don't acknowledge or praise,
I think this is illustrative of the juxtaposition between, because you're right, like he throws the rope for the dog once, but he didn't even know that it was dead for like a day and a half.
I mean, he died without knowing the animal was dead.
Right.
Ingvar died without
But like, he didn't even, like, he went outside the house the next day and was like, dog? Whatever.
Yeah, dude, my dog's gone like upstairs for 20 minutes. None of us left the house, and I'm like, where's my dog?
Yeah, did we leave her outside? Oh shit, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and yet to juxtapose to Ada, right? Who, from Peter's perspective, from an outsider's perspective, is just an animal, and yet they're like hyper anthropomorphizing her.
Well, see, I wonder. Okay,
Peter pet the dog though. He likes animals.
Sure, but okay, anthropomorphizing. Is that the right word?
Hyper anthropomorphizing.
But is it?
It is.
Do they anthropomorphize?
Let me say it is because the sheep wants to be with Ada wants to be with its mother. All right.
Are we sure?
It left with its mother and it was hanging out in the hill with its mother, and they went to go get it. All right. Ada by that point was big enough to be able to have walked on her own. You know what I mean? Alongside her mother. If anything, I could imagine. Can we spoil the end of the movie now?
We can get to the end. Yeah.
Okay. I can infer that the end of that what maybe the mother was doing was perhaps taking Ada to her dad. You know what I mean?
Ooh,
that
that's
day.
Interesting.
It seemed like a runaway. Like, they took you from me. We're gonna get out of here.
That's what I'm saying. But it's like if we're gonna give them a destination to go to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
I would.
But it didn't seem like Ada wanted to leave her stepfather, for lack of a better term, at the end, right? Like she seemed pretty reticent to get up and go with Ram Daddy.
But she didn't run away. She gave him his hand right away.
Oh, he took her hand.
Yeah, he took it.
He's
off
like,
of
"This is
her
my
dad's.
kid. I'm out." You know?
If we're gonna get into the ending, though, I think we got to give it its due here.
Okay,
Yeah.
give it away, Hannah.
I mean, can we just take a minute to talk about this ending?
Okay.
Because it is both the most obvious conclusion to how this happened, but also
And
not the one that any of us would guess.
Yeah, I'm wondering again if this situation is a matter of like a cultural disconnect. Like if I were an Icelander, could I have seen the ending of this movie coming a bit easier? Because in my folklore, I know that there are these Minotaur-esque kind of creatures, you know what I mean, out there that make this movie make more sense in that way. You know, like
I kind of liked how absurd it was, at least on its face. Maybe that is a benefit for us non-Icelanders.
no, for sure. I mean, like
Yeah.
we can take, you know, I don't think there's any, we don't lose any validity to our perspective by not being natives, you know, but I can only imagine that, you know, this is a production made by people, right? And those people have an imagination being born from something, right? A lot of the time people like to pay homage to folkloric conceptions, and especially this kind of studio, you know what I mean? Like they love taking like genuine folklore and then amplifying it, you know, to an nth degree in that way. So I'm wondering again, right? Like, is this a situation where like there's Icelandic folklore where there are Minotaur men?
I mean,
That fuck
sure,
sheep.
but also like audience aside
What
of
else
the
are they gonna
movie,
fuck?
what kills me in this movie is nobody's like, how the fuck did this happen? Nobody does that. Because like when I watch it as like a viewer and like the first time you see Ada with like human parts, I'm like, wait. How does that just happen? Yeah, that's
Did
that
Ingvar, did you
occurs
fuck
to
a
all
sheep?
of us, right?
Yeah, it's weird that she didn't even look at him a little side-eyed at one point.
I'd be looking at someone side-eyed for sure.
Now, this
Like, I'm not
this
really
is
sure
bringing
how
me
this
back,
works.
This is bringing me back to Splice, you know?
Yeah.
And then
The poetry of the flesh.
Yeah, exactly. Started spraying those pheromones and trying to get her her stepdad to have sex with her.
It's just
I just keep picturing this side eye, like, brother, did you fuck that sheep?
also, Jose, we got to talk about this too, because when I watched this movie the first time and I saw Ada, I was like, okay, how the fuck did this happen? And I
Right.
started going through that process. You didn't say anything like that.
No, I try to hold back. I didn't want to be annoying about it because I was like, I hope that there can eventually be a. But remember earlier in the podcast when I stopped myself when I was like, when, you know, that's what I was asking is when on earth is this big sheep man supposed to have come in and fucked this sheep?
It's at the beginning of the movie.
When?
At the very beginning, you're watching this cold night, and all the sheep are staring out the door, and you can kind of hear, if you're listening really closely, heavy footsteps coming in and away from the barn, and then you see the mom like all fucking ravaged because she just got plowed by the Minotaur man.
What?
Holy fucking
Yep.
shit!
I didn't know we started there.
Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't pick up on that.
okay. That's really good because I thought what I thought had happened there is I thought we were watching like an old sheep die. You know what I mean? I thought that was a sheep who,
I thought so too.
its time had come. You know what I mean? And it was like wobbly legged, and it would just had died essentially. I did not consider the possibility that it had just been impregnated by the Ram Man. I'm gonna call
Ram
him.
Man.
Oh,
Ram
wait,
Man.
that sheep looked huge.
Cool.
I thought that was just...
Fuck yeah. Good job, movie. Woo.
No, wait. I really, that was a large sheep. I really thought that was a pregnant sheep about to give birth. I thought that it was like because she was doing the heavy breathing. I thought that was like a lead in to like, because it was right before they start
Doing the different.
Yeah, like...
Well, the heavy
pregnancies.
breathing was from the recent action.
Yeah, because I
I don't know if animals get... I know that animals breathe heavy when they are about to give birth. I cannot speak for, right after the impregnation.
There are, I think that's a pretty big hint, or at least that's what they're trying to illustrate at the beginning, because of the attention of the sheep towards the...
That makes a lot of sense because
Yeah.
they never made a point to be like, oh, we got to throw away this carcass from this old sheep at the beginning of the movie,
Yeah.
right? That's a very good point. Okay. That makes a lot more sense. It makes the beginning of the movie cohere far, far better to the rest of the movie now.
That's a good
Hearing that,
point.
because like that whole aspect of like the beginning where I'm like looking at all the sheep, I'm like, okay, yes, we're in a sheep farm.
Yep, sheep,
Here we
more
are.
sheep, okay.
Yeah, because there's no
It's been
dialogue.
6 minutes of fucking sheep, I'm ready.
Yeah, it's wacky because now it makes sense what you're saying, because like with the laying down on the side and the heavy breathing, I'm like about to give birth. And it's because I'm conflating that to a dog or a cat. Farm animals give birth standing up.
And we saw that multiple times.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what you watched was a sheep have its back blown out.
She was taking back shots, that sheep was.
She needs a break, man.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
That makes me
good.
want to watch it a third time.
Yeah, okay, that was
Just
good.
the
Yeah, that
first
was
5
very
minutes
good.
or whatever.
That salvages the beginning of the movie for sure.
Okay. Tracing back, though, to nobody asking how this happened, because obviously our human people in this movie didn't know that happened. If I am the husband in this situation, and we're like, birthing like a baby lamb together, and my wife pulls out a lamb with like
Human features.
Yeah.
73% human
Yeah.
features.
Yeah, 73% human features. The first thing I would do is throw my hands up and be like, well, not me.
Is that what that's what guilty people do? I didn't do that. I didn't. It wasn't me. It wasn't
You
me.
wouldn't be being the only human male within 1,000 miles, potentially. You wouldn't be a little bit worried about being accused of something like that?
No, you wait for it.
I don't know, I guess. But
I would worry if I lived in a community. but I
Sure.
don't.
Yeah.
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 What would the neighbors think? And those kind of apprehensions are only ever born from third parties.
I don't
living
care about
close.
that. What's your wife gonna think? Like, if I'm
She
the
didn't
wife
give
in
a
this...
fuck. She wrapped that up real quick and took that home. Like she did not care where that
She's
came
like,
from.
this is a gift.
Yeah.
Regardless of what her
For me.
reaction is, he would be the first person I was looking at, dude. Like, I would be like, what happened here?
I don't know if I know enough about how sheep are born, so I'm pretty suspicious of you right now.
I would be very confused. I would be like, okay, between like, there's literally one suspect with human
One
DNA.
suspect. No, there's a hidden suspect.
Yeah, but we didn't know about. I wouldn't be like, yeah, just you and the Minotaur that lives
And the Minotaur men that live in the mountains,
the
yeah.
Minotaur man, yeah, who lives. Okay, here's another thing. Like Iceland doesn't have forests.
Mhm.
You know, like it's all just rolling hills. Where
Mhm.
the fuck is this thing supposed to hide? Where am I supposed to believe that this thing crannies itself in that way?
It's weird because they drop hints, and I think they even show from perspectives of, there are a couple scenes where like you're looking at their house from the perspective of the Minotaur man right now.
How did you see so much more watching this movie for the second time than I did?
I don't know. It had little. That's all I had to pay attention to was the extra stuff. That I
Yeah, it's
hadn't
like,
seen the
like,
first-
what's the Minotaur man doing right now?
Yeah, I wonder
Is
where
it
he
possible that the Minotaur man broke the tractor instead of driving?
You know, that's interesting that happened too, because that's like the catalyst for how the Ram Man gets him. Like it's almost as if the Ram Man is like, he knows they're gonna have to come back out to fix that trailer.
See, but therein lies an issue, though. It's like, okay, so what's the Ram Man's like ultimate desire then? Because he could have just as easily killed Peter there and then taken the child. Then, you know, it's like if the practical thing, if he wants the practical thing, which is his child back, right? I don't think he's going to wait for the perfect moment to make the dramatic irony to kill the husband in order to be able to then take the child.
So great point, right? They've had Ada for, I don't know, a noticeable period of time.
Mm-hmm.
If the Minotaur man knows how to operate a rifle, why didn't he just walk into their house?
And also, is that their rifle? Because I never watched any scene where the Minotaur man went in there and took the rifle.
A rifle.
Yeah,
I think he does.
I
think he had a rifle.
Hey, Minotaur men have to eat too.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it's licensed. Don't worry. First name Rand, last name Man.
Man.
All right?
Ram Man.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, he's at the store. Look, man, just show me the gun.
It's my Second Amendment right, all right? Sir, we're not in the United States.
You got to put pants on if you're going to.
I can see it.
Yeah, there are a couple hints throughout the when he throws the rope for the dog and the dog runs back without retrieving the rope. I think Ram Man was out there stalking out the property. And then there's another scene where Ada walks outside while everybody's drinking in the house.
Yep.
And
That's when the dog dies.
right, yeah, and you see the dog standing next to her, dog's whimpering, and you see her see the Ram Man in that moment. And if you look close enough in her pupil, you can see the reflection of
somebody.
it.
Yeah, I didn't know how to make. I don't know what to make of that silhouette, but I did see something in her eye. But again, this kind of tramples on your point, Matt, about the fact that this movie didn't want to have a moral. Because if that is the case, why can't the Ram Man just take the child from the okay, kill the dog. Okay, understandable. Okay. Yeah, the dog will most certainly keep you from taking the child. But if what the child is what you want, the child is right there. You know what I mean? It's like, why not just do it then?
It's
He wouldn't even have to, like, if I'm the person living in my house, right, and Ram Man walks in the door.
Ram Man, all Ram Man needs to do is knock on the door and be like, that's my kid.
Yeah, I would not even fight him. He could just open the door, come in, take the kid, and leave, and I would just sit there in like hyperventilation and shock. Like,
nature can't be beaten.
Well, Ram Man was probably upset that his baby
boo.
mama,
his baby boo was killed. Yeah, I
got
get
murdered
that.
and buried.
I get that too.
Baby boo. Yeah, my theory about this movie is that the story is actually about Ada and how we're supposed to feel about how fucked up her life is.
What?
Yeah.
You think Ada is the focal point?
That's my theory. That's my theory.
Oh,
Let me try to flesh it out.
Okay.
A little
Yeah,
bit.
please.
Okay.
Give meat to these bones because
we discover in chapter 3 that not only does Ada sort of move and motion like a human, but she understands human speech.
Yep.
She might even be able to speak it a little bit. I think there are hints at that. And even more so, she understands like what fucking breakfast is.
Yeah.
Like she can butter some toast and shit and make
she
turn on
made
the
cereal.
radio.
breakfast.
She
Right.
understands what radios are.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. She and so this is a lamb person, a small lamb person who probably knows that her mother was murdered, that her parents aren't her real parents. And she probably understands all of these things to some degree. And at the end of the movie, she's taken by Ram Man, presumably not to another farm or something, you know.
a Minotaur farm.
Presumably, I don't know, to live in Ram Man territory in the wild as a ram person or as a sheep instead of a person, rather.
A
right?
ewe, right? Isn't that what female
Right.
sheep are called?
Yeah. So Ada has this conception, and even more so, almost a complete understanding of what human life is like because of her being kidnapped.
Yeah.
And now she's being unkidnapped into what her actual life should have been like. And what a fucking nightmare. Like that.
You assume.
Right. Yeah. I would assume.
Because I actually am having a bit of an epiphany here in relation to what you're saying. And in that, I kind of feel as though one can parallel the story of Ada, if we're going to use her as the focal narrative point, right, to like the child immigrant experience, like a foster child immigrant experience in that way. Like, for example, like you are a child from an African country, right, that was imperialized by the British, and then you get adopted by British people, you know what I mean, to go live in Britain. Right, you learn about history as it is, right, and come to understand that, by the by, right, the ancestors and and the people who are essentially taking care of you were the individuals who kidnapped you for all intents and purposes, from the place that you were supposed to be. Even if, like, let's say the place that you were supposed to come from is more provincial and it is just a tribe or whatever, you know what I mean, like. You always do feel this like
connection.
Connection / strange longing / alienation, you know what I mean, in relation to the fact that this just isn't the place that you're meant to be, even if it does have higher creature comforts, right, than the place that you might have eventually have to come from. There are sources that showcase the fact that indigenous people who are taken from their tribe and then implanted into a westernized experience fall into great ennuis and depression, because of the fact that they miss their people so much, and no amount of creature comfort can ever supplant the fact that they feel outside of their own place in that way.
So can we take this like one step backwards, because I think this is just
getting a bit too meta.
I love the meta. I want to dig into the meta.
No, I'm taking a step towards the meta still here.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Ram Man backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Is he a minotaur that's always been like that and was born of minotaurs, or was he the first Ada and he's lonely?
He definitely looks like of the race Minotaur, right?
Yeah, and he looks like
genus or whatever.
He looks like he's had the opportunity to take care of himself to adulthood. I mean, like, if you look at his, at his body composition, he doesn't look unhealthy. He doesn't look too lean. He doesn't look as though he's been in many fights where he's like, where he's like worse for wear. He looks like a genuine adult creature of his species in his prime.
Yeah.
I
don't like the fact that they did this in Iceland, because again, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, the geography of Iceland just doesn't allow for that kind of hiding of 6'7" men. You know what I mean? Like ram men. You know what I mean? Like,
well, there's so much land and so much hills, though. I just from like personal experience, if you're in a big open area with enough space, like the human eye doesn't really detect a lot of movement all that far into the distance, and then you throw hills in there too. And
we also don't know how high they can jump.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah,
it's frolicking.
Yeah, I imagine Lamb 2 starts with the Ram Man taking Ada back to their home, like cave or whatever. You know what I mean? He like does like woof, like a 30-foot jump. You know what I mean? She's like, what the fuck?
I think that it is a feasible possibility that maybe if we take it back another generation, maybe he's not a minotaur. Maybe the Ram Man was actually started from like a human person doing some questionable things with another species. And if that, just stick with me here for a second.
No, keep going.
If that is the case, and he's been out on his own, excommunicated for all these years, the reason he would be seeking out, he might be seeking out having a child so he can start his own community and have like a like-mindedness. Like, I mean, he might be taking Ada as his child. He also might be taking Ada as his wife. Don't make that sound. I'm just throwing out possibilities. Don't.
You gotta make it darker than it already is. It's fucking terrible.
No, I mean obviously
I'm
the
just
obviously
asking
the Minotaur
questions.
people are master craftsmen of guns and other ranged weaponry. So I'm pretty sure that there's a community out there somewhere.
I really think
village.
I really think he took that gun
Ram and
because
Wesson, yeah.
I think that was the same gun that was used 2 other times in this
Yeah.
movie.
Well,
I think you're right.
But I don't think so because it's like the sound of those guns was like a lower caliber. You know what I mean? Like when she killed Ada's when Maria killed Ada's mom, it was like a little pop. You know, like
Yeah.
it was like just a hair. It was like a hair above a BB gun kind of situation. You know what I mean? She did it right at the head. You know what I mean? The second time, it was the same gun, right? Because he pulled it exactly from the same place. But then the shot that the Ram Man did to the, and maybe I'm just fucking up because it's been like 30 minutes since we started watched the movie, but like it felt like it was a bigger caliber, bigger shot, you know?
If he
And even when I see the hole coming from one side or the other, it looks bigger than the hole that was in the sheep, you know?
Could be he brought it from home.
But then again, the Ram Man did just chuck the rifle right next to
Right.
Ingvar
Like he disregarded it
once he was
completely.
done with it. Yeah.
Like I only needed to kill this guy and then
Yeah,
I'm
which
outie.
makes me think that maybe he's an herbivore because if you're a meat eater, you probably want that, right?
Yeah, rams are
What the,
herbivores.
what the body? Yeah, totally.
Well, but yeah, but he's 73% human.
Mm.
Yeah, it's interesting because okay, if Ada is literally 73% human, right? Or thereabouts.
Yeah.
And then she does go back to live with Ram Man in Ram Village or Ram Cave or wherever it is. You get the same sort of I personally get the same sort of disgusted sadness at the bleak future that this poor human understanding animal has. I think that's like, if there is a message of the movie, it's this blending of it's like this morality check of like, you see Ada's real mom coming back over and over again, like, give me my fucking kid. And then at the end it's tied off with, you see Ada's dad like, no, I'm coming to get my kid. And even Ada herself, all these little, like when she runs back and looks at herself in the mirror, like, oh, I just saw my dad, I think. And then like, what the hell am I? What am I doing? You know, it's so much of these little moments of like,
So are you like comparing this to like maybe like a kid that gets adopted from like to like a richer parents, and then like there's like then like the shittier parents, like the shittier poor parents come by and be like, that's my kid.
Oh,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? Like, no, I don't care what you do to my
Like
kid. I'm taking my
Matilda
kid
or
back. All right.
that's Matilda, right?
Yeah.
I really, really think that if there are more minotaurs,
And it's like, oh, sorry, Hannah.
if there are more minotaurs, then he's gonna be looking to fuck other minotaurs.
Oh, she's
I
still
really-
caught up on the whole of it. Like, Ada's gonna be his wife now.
Well, no, it's because you guys keep referencing Minotaur, like Ram Man Village. Like, I really don't buy it. I think he's by himself.
Yeah, I think ram men are a solo species,
Not anymore.
much like snowcats and other things like that.
Oh, they just, even still, polar bears, right? Polar bears hang out by themselves. They've evolved to track each other for miles so that they can still mate.
And ram men and polar bears are on a similar genus. Like,
Yeah.
they came from the same.
Why is he fucking sheep?
He had a moment of weakness. You know,
Moment of weakness.
he was out drunk, stumbled upon a barn.
Oh, shut
Well,
up.
Ram Man is like 36% sheep. So I mean,
It's weird that like Ram Man is so much more like definitely a species or something that's like defined in a way, and his offspring is not.
but maybe it's just a matter of development. I mean, if
Oh,
you looked
yeah.
if you looked at a caterpillar, you would never assume it was going to die as a butterfly. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, they literally turn into goo in the cocoon.
Yeah.
How weird is that?
Got to become amorphous.
Ugh. It's so strange.
There's a there's a lesson. You know what I mean? Let go of past preconceptions and allow yourself to become fluid again to rise.
It's already still incredibly astounding that she would come out looking anything like him.
Yeah. I'm curious, just for my own curiosity, would a question I want to pose to both of you. You're Peter. you have Ada, the step parents are sleeping. Do you pull the trigger? Like, is it like, how do you deal with that?
No,
conundrum?
I wouldn't.
No,
I wouldn't.
What?
That's their problem.
That's their problem.
Outside of that, dude, like
I'm not getting involved.
She makes breakfast. She's got like she's okay. 2 reasons, right? One is like on the other side of it, right? If a human couple suffers a great grief and then they start treating their dog like a child, I don't care. If
Wait.
it makes them happy and they're not mistreating anything, if
Okay,
anything,
that's-
they're giving something a better life. You go for it. However you need to grieve. I'm in no place to tell anybody how to grieve.
Let me take it back to the first moment then. You're one of the parents. You see Ada come out of that sheep. Are you bundling up that sheep, baby? Are you bringing
not
it inside?
Killing it. I don't know what it is.
You're not killing it. What are you going to do with it?
I guess I'm gonna keep it because
Giving
I
it
don't
to
have a
science, that's
hospital
for
to
sure.
bring it to.
Hmm.
Well, and like there's that additional pressure, right? Because you're like, do I bring it somewhere or are they going to dissect it?
Mm.
You know? I can very much, I don't know if I would be like, this is my child now, I'm going to name it after my dead child. But I don't think I would do that. But I might end up raising a sheep person. I could see myself in that reality if this exists, like if this happened to me.
I'd give
Jose?
it away.
You what?
I'd give it away.
You'd give it
I'd
away.
give it away to the nearest and most, understandably ethical, like scientific body.
Oh,
Like,
that zoo in Canada where they just take
yeah, exactly.
comers.
Yeah,
That
and
walrus
it'll be
one you kept
there.
mentioning.
Right,
you keep
right,
mentioning. Yeah.
Yeah, in tiny,
Very
inhumane
wholesome.
enclosures, like
With a nice beach
smaller
ball.
than a fenced-in
Yeah,
yard.
but see, there's nothing to study about that guy. I mean, we know that that's literally a man inside of other, of more.
And he just went full walrus.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is a genuine chimera. Like, how is it that these DNA strands are keeping themselves fucking together? Like,
Yeah.
it's holy fucking shit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, and not only that, but it's growing at an accelerated rate. Like it's growing at the rate of sheep.
Right.
Like, because they've only had the child for a couple months, I would imagine, right? And it's like, and by that point, it's already a 4-year-old toddler, essentially, like a 4 or 5-year-old toddler.
Making breakfast. And,
Mhm, yeah.
I'm like way too deeply empathetic. I would definitely end up in this weird, crazy co-parenting situation with the sheep, trying to figure out where she belonged.
like grass in one hand and cereal in the
Yeah,
other. Like,
like,
what do you need?
think?
No, but see, you can't do that. You can't do that. You have to
can.
you have to make the decision for the child to be able to essentially like enculturate it in that way. Because like Peter was like, here, have some grass. Oh, you know what I mean? And the lamb aspect of her absolutely was all down to feralize herself in that way. You know what I mean? And just be lamb. You know? But like it's only because I mean, and honestly, you can easily tie that to a human, right? Because I mean, a human is literally a paper thin ape, right? I mean, like the amount of cases of feral children is staggering, right? And like the amount and the fact that like there is nothing innate about enculturization. You know what I mean? It is such like a man, like genuine, like capital M mankind, like idea and like project. You know what I mean? That you need a whole at least 100 200 people to be able to do it appropriately in that way. Like your child needs to be able to create a prism of people, you know what I mean, in order to be able to understand like the different amount of like accentuations that a person can be. Like people can be very brave, people can be very cowardly, people can be very romantic, people can be very cold, and it's like, and they will never be able to get that from just you or just the 5-6 people in your immediate family.
So, call me crazy, but if I lived out in the middle of nowhere and I was worried about bringing her out somewhere else for her safety, and I decided to raise her with myself, I would choose, I think, to get part of that community for her from the sheep. We have a ton of sheep here. We live here with a ton of sheep. We don't have other humans for you to interact with. We don't want to put you in danger. I would let her coexist with both.
But how do you then not have it lean over to one side more than the other, because
Right.
we can most certainly say that being a human is better than being a sheep, right? Or if at the very least they're dissonant concepts, right?
Yeah.
You can't be a sheep part-time and then, like let it go and then become a human the other part-time. Like
No,
being a human
but-
is a full-time project. And even apes that have been human since the moment they were born are failing at it at this very moment. You know what I mean? So it's like,
It's really
I just-
interesting. I was just gonna I don't know if they let all the sheep go or what that's about, but they're all gone. Like in chapter 3 of the movie, there's no more sheep.
wait, what?
Yeah. I don't know if you noticed that, but when what's his name? Peter wakes up in the barn, and this is mid chapter 2. There's no sheep in that barn.
No,
Sounds like
he's
they're
not in the barn. He's in a
like-minded.
closet, dude.
He slept in the
doesn't he
barn
wake up and
first.
he can see the barn and it's just empty?
No, he wakes up in that closet next to their kitchen because that's where she like baited him to.
You guys are talking about separate scenes.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
Because when he first shows up, they don't know he's there. He sleeps in the barn. He looks down that feeding trough and he sees the silhouette of Ada. That's what you're
that's
talking
what
about.
you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
But at that point, that's daytime. Don't sheep go outside in the daytime? Aren't they frolicking?
Well, just think about it with me for a second here, because there's this one weird scene where a bunch of the sheep are running over a hillside.
right.
And as far as I can remember, I don't think
No,
there
no,
are
isn't-
any sheep.
No, sheep running over a hillside. Are you sure you're not? Are you sure you're not like juxtaposing that with like Ada looking really intently at the portrait of
No,
the
not the
sheeps in
picture.
the hills?
No, there was a literal scene of a bunch of sheep just running sort of towards the horizon. And it was about
Okay, well then I can most certainly see a little bit of merit in a second viewing in this movie
Right.
in that way to catch those kind of things for sure.
Well, and I'm wondering if this is exactly the reason why the movie does this, or at least why I think the movie does this, is what you were just saying about how you can't be sheep 23% of the time and human 73%, but it's not going to work.
Nope. Yeah.
And I think
In the same
after
way you can't be an ape 23% of the
Right.
time and a human, even though that is innately inside of you, right? It's like you have to choose to be human all of the time. Like
Yeah.
you can't fall to your baser instincts.
I don't think it has to be like a 100% one thing one time, 100% other thing other time. I think it's possible that with Ada's DNA, that she might understand more about the sheep when she interacts with them and be able to pick up on more things than a human person can.
are you saying Ada's like future Dr. Doolittle
She's
sheep
like the
whisperer?
sheep ambassador.
No, that is not exactly what I was saying.
Oh yeah,
but
she speaks for the sheep.
I'm saying that she might be able to collect some sense of community from both. And I don't know if that would cause her like more emotional mental strain of like not feeling like she has a place of belonging. But I do think she'd have that either way.
I would say
Because
that
she
the
looked in
sheep
the
would-
mirror.
I would say that in opposition to what you're saying, that the sheep in that situation would win out just from sheer number. You know
Then
what I mean?
shouldn't she be with them?
That's a great question.
See, isn't that the whole thing that Ram Man is kind of bringing up in terms of points? Because if
In terms
This is Ram Man's point right here.
yeah, because I mean, like if let's say Matt's 100% right, and like the sheep are now feral sheep, you know what I mean, in the countryside, and let's say they go to Ram Man's protection, you know what I mean, like that's the community that Ram Man has now.
that's
you
his
know.
harem.
Yeah, that's his harem now. Like potentially he can eventually come to make it so like there's enough distinctness between Ada's cousins, you know what I mean? That like she could eventually when she grows older have a mate that doesn't end up, you know, having too much of like incestual like like you know.
It's just like this
Lamb
wacky...
2 is wild.
A lot of lamb fucking.
I really think that growing up and maturing and like coming of age, growing into adulthood can come with so many changes that like when she's like, you know, not fully developed and she's a young child, she might lean more into, you know, like a sheep community. Whereas like, you know, as you grow older, you're going to find on either side there are unfulfilled needs. So I don't know. I guess
Which is what I was, you know, trying to parallel it to like the adopted immigrant child comparison, right? In the sense that like from that culture, it's like, yeah, sure, like this culture might provide more creature comforts at the end of the day, but there is always this longing to be able to understand the full picture of yourself
Yeah.
in that way, of the sense that like visually and aesthetically speaking, I just don't belong here in the way that other people do,
Yeah, I don't 100% fit in with either of these communities.
My ancestors don't, the land doesn't speak of my ancestors, like in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why, but maybe it's because we just got done watching Raised by Wolves, which I don't know if you've seen, but it deals with a lot of the stuff that Westworld does in the same sort of Philip K. Dick, Android's Dream of Electric Sheep type of way.
Yeah.
And it just strikes me as like Ada is supposed to be that representation, right? She's supposed to be that where do we draw our lines for what a human is? How do we, could Ada ever be introduced into human society? Would that be a thing? Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, because what qualifier could you use for her, right? Oh, is it because she's mute? I mean, there's plenty of mute people, you know what I mean? Like, is it because she doesn't have both hands to be able to communicate in that possible? There's plenty of people who don't have that, you know what I mean? Like, there really isn't anything about her condition per se, so long as she has the willingness of enculturation, you know what I mean, that could keep her aside from arbitrariness, you know what I mean, aside from the petty arbitrariness of of people, that to keep her like out I mean, from the table, essentially, you know what I mean, from like being able to just be part of the conversation in relation to humanism, because hopefully, right, the whole concept of humanity is that eventually we can impart that to every sentient creature that we meet, like that every creature that we can actually have a genuine conversation with. It'd be like, no, like you're a human now, you know what I mean? Like you, like even though you are your species or whatever, and I am my species over here, like we still fall under the same universal umbrella of human, because we, this is how humans talk. Yeah. Right now our species is the only one that can do that. So it's a very mono concept right now. But one can only hope that there can be plurality to that in terms of species, where human is just an umbrella term for sentient enough to always be conferred rights in that way, Yeah.
I think that word that you used was really important, I think, where you said the willingness to like
enculturate.
And partake in a human society. And I think that's the most important thing from my perspective. This is an opinion thing. But like she looked in the mirror, right? And not very many creatures can even do that. So like what I want to say is like as a self-aware being or entity, that willingness piece is important, like from my perspective, like if something is a self-aware entity, I want to give it choice. And I think isolating her from either species, because the way the DNA works, it's a 50-50.
This is just what's so sad. Yeah, this is what makes me so sad about this movie.
Like, I think it's important to expose to both to try to preserve her ability to choose. Because if you cut her away from sheep and you raise her as a human, then she doesn't have any ability to choose, because she's not, growing the things that she would had she stayed with the sheep. This is a crazy fucking conversation, but
it's a catch-22.
Yeah, it's a crazy movie.
It's fucked up.
Yeah,
but again, I mean, to anthropomorphize the thought, right? I mean, like, I would imagine that's exactly the same kind of contention that an individual who is plucked from X culture to another, and yet still has that, that longing, you know what I mean, that siren song of like their homeland kind of situation of being like, what's the right place to be in? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, okay, these people have it all figured out and the creature comforts are really high over here, but my people need me, let's say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, let's say my people aren't in that great of a place. Like, I can take the resources and education that I've learned here and apply them in order to be able to then be the ambassador to my more downtrodden people.
Ooh, the downtrodden people.
In the same way that Ada could eventually become the poster child for PETA. Like
that
she's
might
the bloody
work.
sheepskin.
You know what? That might actually make PETA seem like a good organization.
Actually legitimize them a little bit. Yeah.
Well,
so they stop stealing homeless people's dogs and other crazy shit.
Oh my god, don't. No, but like that does the poster child type thing and like my people type thing creates another angle, right? Is maybe that's why they get rid of the sheep, is like,
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like their ethicality just doesn't allow.
Right.
Like they've born new ethics because of the fact that they're like, oh, like old slaveholders, like antebellum slaveholders,
Yep.
essentially. Like they
yeah,
they grew a consciousness overnight and be like, oh fuck, we can't do this anymore.
Oh,
yeah,
Darn
like
it.
how is she supposed to exist on this land? And then like as she slowly develops more and more thought, you run the
be
risk
like, oh
of
yeah,
her-
we have all your people submissed right
yeah.
here. Yeah.
Go milk your aunt out there. Yeah.
Yeah, why do
Yeah.
my people
shear
live
Uncle
in
Tom.
this shitty barn?
Yeah,
and
literally-
you live in the
Right.
house.
Literally the android problem of being
Exactly.
like, why do I have to do all this shit? Why do my people have to go and die, you know what I mean, in this hole, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, by the thousands?
Yeah.
Why
For
do you
what?
sell my
Yeah.
people for
Mhm.
money?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna like go ahead, and I feel like I have no concept of time when we're doing this,
You're
but
gonna
I feel
chop
like
it?
we're really, we're really stretching this movie.
We're almost
We're
at the
gonna end
runway.
it at, why would you sell my people for money?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
I speak
Yeah.
for the lambs.
Do we name these? Can we name this episode? Why would you sell my people for money?
Yeah, we can subtitle it.
We can start doing that, yeah.
I think it's good to take a quote. from
Lamb
each
or
episode.
why would you sell
Why
my
would you
people
sell
for
my
money?
Yeah, no, that being said, I want to dive into like overall ratings to wrap this up, but man, we got so much more conversation out of this movie than I initially expected we would be able to. So yay for that. That's awesome. We had a really good time. So let's take the rounds and talk about ratings.
Okay.
Jose, you want to go first?
On the first viewing, 3.5. Second viewing, I could see it getting up to a 4.5 because
Mhm.
I'd be looking for the kind of things that you mentioned, Matt.
Mhm.
But from just an initial perspective, the beginning was sloggy, and even with the retrospective revelations, I can't sprinkle them to myself in the past to then make it exciting there. You know
Right,
what I mean?
Right.
But it's certainly a good enough movie to finish. Let marinate inside of your brain, and if you let it marinate well enough, you'll most certainly be able to get another star out of wherever you land. Essentially, I feel, like a good lamb piece. You can marinate. It'll be succulent and delicious.
Poor taste. Poor taste.
Poor taste. Too soon.
It's delicious.
Well, I'll just piggyback right off of that. I probably feel about I think it's funny because when we first watched this movie a couple months ago with Jared, super late, I think it was Halloween.
Mhm.
Last year, Halloween.
We were not. I mean, we were all intoxicated.
We were a little sauced
full
up.
disclosure.
But I was 100% committed to watching this movie. And when it ended, initially, I was mad.
Mm.
I was mad that the answer to the movie was, oh, Minotaur Man,
Ram Man?
is daddy. Yeah, Ram Man is dad. And that's why. And so that's the answer. And
Good night.
But yeah, we were talking about it earlier to see if this was the pick for this week, to have you watch and whether there was enough meat on these bones. No pun intended. And
Ugh, stop.
I think I'm agreed. I'll probably put myself at about a 4, as reticent as I am to do so, because we really did get a lot out of this conversation. I was very pleased by it. So yeah, I'm gonna jump at about a 4.
I can't ever give it the kind of point that will eventually make it be a 5 out of 5 with retrospect, because again, the characterizations of the main characters are still too anemic for that to ever like happen, you know. But a 3.5 to a 4 to a 4.5, I feel is
Solid.
Fair and reasonable. Okay, then to jump in with my vote, I'm coming at this from a really similar angle that Matt is, although I don't feel that I was as angry with this movie as Matt was when we finished it the first time. And there's like an absurdism humor that came along with it too. We laughed about
Eventually.
it a lot.
Yeah.
I think we spent like 5 minutes laughing at this movie after the first time we
Yeah.
watched it.
It's Ram Man. Oh, of course.
Yeah,
Fucking Ram
like,
Man.
oh, well, why didn't we think of that?
yeah.
But I really do also have to come in at a 4. And it's not to quote myself again and again and again. Anybody who, very unlikely, anybody who listens to this episode who has listened to other ones, my major thing with movies is, am I going to forget about it? because that's the biggest downfall with movies for me, especially being someone who watches a lot of movies. I forget a lot of movies. And this movie is unforgettable from my perspective. I remembered a lot of this movie, having not seen it for a significant period of time. I've watched a lot of movies since this movie on the first watch, and I think about this movie sometimes, and that's major props for me, and it was only pushed upwards by how much conversation and how much variety of options and conversation. The movie left so much open for us to just think about, and I appreciate that. I gotta come in at a 4. I'm tempted to a 4.5 even, but I'm gonna come in at a 4.
Cool.
Solid. Don't steal children.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
And
Hot
if you
take.
do, kill
Don't
both
fuck
parents.
sheep.
Don't
All good messages.
Yeah.
Okay,
You know me,
that,
the practical angle.
that all being said, I think we can go ahead and wish you all a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.